From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel. Our brother-in-arms, Ben, is away on adventures, but will be returning soon. And you know that means this is stuff they don't want you to know, the podcast.
That's right. We're joined by our super producer, Dylan Lord Rutabaga Fagan.
Yes.
You are you.
Rutabaga Fagan.
Yes. You are you. You are here. And that is what makes this stuff they don't want you to know, everybody.
Gosh, I totally messed with that. That's what happens when Ben's.
Hey, he keeps these trains on the tracks. Thank you, Sir Ben. We miss you, but we'll see you soon. It's Thursday, y'all. You know what that means. We're hearing from the best part of this show, you.
Yes, you. That's right, you. We are super excited to bring you another instance, segment, whatever you want to call it, of Listener Mail.
That's right. Tonight on Stuff They Don't Want You to Know, Listener Mail, we're talking attention spans, more exploding devices, nocturnal emissions, and more. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Okay.
That's right. I hid that one in there. It's going to be a surprise for Noel.
All right. I'm ready. Or maybe
Hey,
I'm
but
not.
first, before we get started, let's hear a quick voicemail from a certain so-and-so who just hipped us to a thing that we've all been watching, but it is something we need to be paying more attention to. Here we go.
All right.
This is Crooked Scorpion. I think that you should take a look at some of the stuff that current President Trump has been doing, specifically regarding declassifying files regarding the JFK, MLK, and RFK incidents and people. And so the rumor is right now that a unprecedented number of documents are about to be declassified and released to the public. So that might be something for you guys to take a look at. All right, feel free to use this if you so desire. Again, this is Crooked Scorpion, long time, signing off.
Oh,
Matt, have you actually read any of these executive orders? Like, the language of them is very fascinating to me. At the very least, the first line is, by the authority vested in me as president, by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered as follows. And then, the things that follow, which are declassification of JFK, RFK, and what's the third one?
MLK.
Of course, yes. And you've got real deep knowledge on those MLK tapes, and I'm sure through the production of that podcast, you got a sense of what might be in some of these documents.
Oh, for certain. I am at the edge of my seat waiting, basically. And, this show, each of us as individuals, but also this show as a thing has been waiting on those JFK and RFK files as well for, since we started. And every couple of years, usually with every administration, there's an announcement. Hey, we're going to release some more files. We're going to get a little bit more out there.
Just a little bit, just a little trickle,
Well, yeah, and it's true, and they do, and it's sometimes hundreds of files, sometimes thousands of files, and then it's the job of journalists to go through and parse through that stuff, figure out if there's anything that's worth actually telling everybody about and making it a story.
I asked such a boneheaded question that I will fully cop to before we started recording. I'm like, so what happens next? Are they just going to make a website for it? The government? It's like, here it is, guys. Here. No, that is not how it works. It's all these FOIA Act, requests. And then you're right. I mean, they may declassify it, but it's still just potentially a needle in a haystack kind of situation for the folks that have to parse through it, like you said.
Yeah, I am assuming because of the weight of this executive order that there will be some kind of PR notice, like a public relations burst or something that comes out. Hey, here are the new files. They exist now and you can look at them here. It would be pretty amazing to have the entirety of all of it just laid out so we would know what's happening. But it also could be terrifying.
Well, do you have a sense of what a move like this means or what the message is? Like, is it a we've got nothing to hide kind of situation? Is it like a it's been long enough, we want to give people the truth? Like, I always kind of second guess these kinds of decisions, from a PR standpoint.
Right. In my mind, everybody is aware at this point that there are secrets when it comes to what happened during each of those three assassinations, right?
Mm-hmm.
What the government did, how they reacted, what they knew beforehand, all of that stuff. There's some secrets in there somewhere that none of us know yet, but all of us know that the answers to the questions that remain are either going to be damaging to some intelligence agency, to the government itself, to, the way other countries view the United States.
Sure.
There's something in there that's dangerous and damaging that the stamp of national security is just real bright on that thing.
But the question is damaging to whom? Like, if it is a political maneuver, is this something where there's the potential for like a previous administration to take a fall for it, or another, not opposing political party? I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking it, but it does seem like there has to be some maneuvering in that direction.
Well, this is speculation on my part, but I feel as though if you got to the heart of the matter with each of those, you might find out some super unsettling things about the FBI and how it really functioned. At least that's what the MLK tapes kind of got pointed towards, basically, and what we uncovered and what you and Ben and I have been talking about for, dang, almost 2 decades now. God.
Well, and I mean, maybe to that point, Matt, it could well help the argument of, we need to clean house and restructure government agencies and like redefine how these things work, because there's too much corruption and too little oversight.
Yeah, in the 60s, there was too much corruption, because that's really what we're talking about, right? 63 to 68.
But I'm just saying, like, if there was a political reason for doing something like this and the news stories that it'll generate, it makes sense that it would be something that a current official could point to and justify maybe some of the stuff that they're doing, if they even bother needing to justify it,
For sure. But for now, we're going to have to just sit around, keep your eyes peeled to those internets and see what we find, because it could be beautiful. It could be terrifying. Either way, it's about the death of 3 highly influential, important human beings. So it's probably not going to be fun.
Yeah. And 3 fascinatingly flawed human beings.
Yeah.
If you really look into their backstories. And I mean, it's just, I don't know, the history alone is staggering.
For sure. So let's all pay attention. For now, we're going to take a quick break, hear a word from our sponsors, and we'll be right back with more messages from you.
And we're back with a couple of shorties, one with a fun link that we're going to get right to about some strange news, actually. But we'll start with a message from Sacra Tomato, who's from Sacramento. When I first read this, I read it as, "You can call me Sacramento. I'm from Sacramento." Much more clever than that. He's a Sacra Tomato. Going on, I read a lot. And as I was listening to your podcast on social media and attention span, I started thinking about how sometimes I'll catch myself finishing a page and realizing I didn't absorb a single thing from the last paragraph and go back to actually absorb the content. It's like driving subconsciously. I think I've started to read to the point that I can finish a book and not know what I've even read, just like how we can subconsciously do that. Also ironic, I was writing this email while listening to a show in low attention span mode.
Nice.
Sacra Tomato, I applaud you for your candor here. I have experienced this phenomenon more times than I can count, and it has actually hindered me from being much of a reader. I've mentioned it on the show before. Like, I've got a goal that I want to like read a handful of these wonderful books and music biographies and fiction that I've bought over the last few years, but have not been able to crack because of this very thing. I'll start reading, I'll find myself thinking about something else while still reading the words, but to Ben's point, you can't multitask. You're not fully thinking about the thing outside of what you're doing, and you're also not fully processing the information that you're taking in while doing that. And I find myself rereading whole pages and still having a hard time feeling like I'm retaining it. So my goal this year is to really do some of the things we were talking about in terms of limiting screen time. A friend of mine turned me on to an app, actually, I think one of probably many, that sort of limits your screen time and sort of locks you out and allots you little bits of time. Obviously, you can always bypass it, but I wish I knew the name of it. But I mean, this type of app certainly is a thing, and for good reason, right? But have you experienced this, Matt, with trying to sit down and really take in a book?
Yes, for sure. It's a bit different for me. Most of my reading now occurs on a screen, and it's usually an article or, something.
That's part of the problem, isn't it? We're doing the thing that is limiting our attention span for our work. And then we also still live in that same ecosystem for pleasure. And it starts the lines get really blurry. I'm sorry to interrupt, but it occurs to me that that's exactly true for me as well. But I find that it just bolsters my screen dependency.
Oh, for sure. I've noticed that I use the same rules with reading as I do for psychedelic drugs.
Okay.
Which is a little weird. It's set and setting for me.
Okay.
And so if I prepare myself to read, I prepare my environment to read, and I, I actively think about where I'm going to be, how I'm going to be sitting, what the light's going to be like.
Yep.
And then I go and I do that thing. I can focus in on just that.
Yeah. I recently bought some really cool record shelves that are more like the kind you might see in a record store. And it's caused me to really enjoy my record collection a lot more, where I can just flip through and put something on. And I've been doing that constantly because the act of picking out and putting on a record and listening to the span of time that it takes to fill up one side of that record, and in that time, like focusing on doing a task and using that to kind of mark time. I've tried to be more intentional just with my, around the house time. And I think I'm going to, next goal for me is to figure out that set and setting for reading a book. Maybe it involves putting on a record. Maybe it's a type of record, like an ambient, electronic, instrumental record or something. And then I read for the duration of one side of the record, and then maybe take a little pause, flip it over, read a little more. And if I can consume it maybe in chunks like that, maybe I can manage my attention span better and almost, retrain that muscle, because it atrophies. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. It's been a long time since I've been I was going to use the word enraptured, since I was so stuck in a book and excited about its contents that I would just pick it up and read it. Even if there are people talking around me, even if there's stuff going on in my world, that I would just sit and look at a book and read it. Mm-hmm. I
forgot what that feels like, and I want to get that back. It's a wonderful feeling. And, Ben is such a voracious reader, and I really envy him a lot of times. Like, I've been on long flights with him where I've seen him finish a book, on a 6-hour flight to the West Coast or whatever.
Yep. It's amazing. It's a superpower.
It is indeed. Well, thank you, Sacra Tomato. We hear you. We support you in your struggle. And we're honestly right there with you. Moving on to a message from our pal, the Stoned Coyote. But in this situation, he's referring to himself by the new, more fiery moniker, the Combustible Coyote. And you'll see why in a second. Hey, guys, I hope you are seeing this. The tactic has shown to be effective with the pagers and radios, so it only makes sense that others are going to find ways to implement it. And I should have copied and pasted. He probably had a really clever subject line for this email, like exploding goggles or something like that, but I left that out. But he is, in fact, talking about a news story that he linked to on Business Insider about drone headsets. And Matt, maybe you know a little bit more about the tech here, but I'm imagining these are military grade drone headsets that go along with piloting a small drone. It would be a heads up display, like an onboard camera, on the device that you would be able to monitor, maybe have some stats or, what's the word? Like pitch and yaw, kind of like a flight simulator type, some sort of center reticle or something. I don't know. Have you heard much about these?
Yeah, there are a bunch of different versions and, upgrades that are constantly happening. And it's a technology that is just honestly skyrocketing when it comes to innovation. Some of them are full on like virtual environments that you go into, and some of them are a little less low tech.
Yep. I'm seeing it now. VR headsets. That sounds incredible. I mean, doesn't that kind of like make the idea of flying a drone sound a whole lot more fun, but also if you were using it in a military capacity, a whole lot more precise.
Yeah. And quite frankly, terrifying.
Yeah, no, 1,000,000%. I'm sorry. I always kind of get not hung up, but excited about the nerdy tech side of it before I then realize the kind of long-term humanity ramifications of some of these kind of things. I try to live somewhere between those two extremes.
No, for sure. For sure.
Well, in any case, these things are exploding on people's heads, Russian troops' heads. In fact, there's an article I referenced, or actually that Combustible Coyote referenced on Business Insider by Mia Jankowicz. Drone headsets sent to Russian troops were booby-trapped to explode when switched on, state media says, and that state news agency is TASS. They say that the sabotaged headsets were supplied via humanitarian aid. That's interesting. I guess I never really thought of humanitarian aid doling out military gear.
Yeah, let's go. Just on that note, let's go to the source.
For sure,
right?
Please.
How did Business Insider hear about this? Well, they heard about it from Igor Potapov.
Much better. Whichever. Potato Potapov.
Potapov. He is, quote, a spokesperson for the Russian manufacturer JSC-NPP, and he told a state-controlled news agency.
TASS. We got a lot of acronyms here.
Well, but this is a spokesperson for a Russian manufacturer speaking to a state-controlled news agency. And they are saying that an individual donated the goggles as humanitarian aid. So like some person, this guy is telling a state-controlled thing that some person, it feels like
capacity.
It's way down the line there, right? So we're not saying this isn't true necessarily. It's just like, sounds like something.
Is that just a box that you tick when you donate military VR drones to a government or to a country?
What are one of the biggest threats facing, the Russian military right now as they operate in Ukraine? What are one of the biggest threats that Ukrainian soldiers and, citizens are facing right now? It is these drones.
Absolutely.
And those drones, the actual body of the drone is designed to either hold explosives or carry explosives. And, in this case, there's high explosives, at least according to the story, inside the headset. So you're trying to take out the person that's trying to take out
the person. Your
soldiers.
Person. Yeah. And this article is answering literally every single question that I posed at the top. Potapov said the goggles were a brand Sky Zone Cobra X V4. And they're used to, just as I was maybe conjecturing, provide a first-person view when controlling these drones. And again, I also imagine that it has, XY type role and all of that stuff as well. He added, this is quoting directly from the Business Insider piece, that when the military opened the batch, they found plastic explosives in all of the products. Yikes. They don't go into detail about, did this literally blow people's heads off? I mean, is that the implication, Matt?
Potentially, but in this case, they're just saying they opened up a shipment and maybe they had some way of testing the product for explosives or narcotics or whatever they were doing, some kind of customs system where they got a shipment in, they checked them out, and they found plastic explosives. And I'm assuming anybody and everybody who is sourcing electronic devices for their military, right, or for military use, I'm assuming everybody right now is checking everything.
Oh, absolutely. Just the statement from Potapov is just so straightforward. It just says, when the glasses were turned on, they detonated and exploded. There's no mention of were they on a person or, again, like you said, were they being tested? But it's a good point, Matt, because this does go back to a story that we covered pretty in depth. All of those exploding pagers and walkie-talkies that plagued Hezbollah.
Yeah, absolutely. Very dangerous situation for an individual human when that stuff's happening. And if you're on the wrong side of whoever is attempting to sabotage your tech,
yep.
All you got to do usually is turn it on or have a signal sent to it, depending on how the device is triggered, and then it's over. In this case, there is a Telegram account that allegedly showed stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can see, I'm looking at images right now of what appears to be plastic explosive in a fairly tight container that would be a part of this VR headset.
I gotta wonder, when you look at tech, when you open it up and you look at a printed circuit board and all of the little components, been doing a lot of that with all this modular garbage that I mess with. There are little capacitors and little things that are soldered onto one of these circuit boards. And they sometimes are little round kind of plastic things with a coating on them. I do wonder, is it that little? Because it wouldn't be enough C4. Well, maybe that's just too generic a term for plastic explosives, but that's what I remember from the Die Hard movies. If it was just a small amount, it would be enough to really, really injure somebody, but not enough to take out a building or something. So I'm wondering, are they literally sneaking it in, disguised as some of these soldered on components?
No, in this case, imagine the housing, the side housing that would be a plastic piece that goes over the metal components to kind of give the product a shape or something.
Of course.
In between that piece of plastic and the actual metal part, the internal metal part, there's plastic explosive. It looks kind of like putty spread throughout that flat surface. And it appears to be about the size, maybe half the size of a cell phone. At least that's what it looks like from the images I'm seeing. So it's designed to take out personnel, a single person, whoever is going to use this device, it'll take that person out, but it's probably not going to do damage to a structure.
More than what I was suggesting, but not enough to like take out a facility. Like this is like a single serve explosive device.
Oh yeah.
And, we're not the only one making this connection. Matthew Ford was a war expert and a lecturer in international relations at Sussex University, or the University of Sussex. He compared it to Israel's attacks on Hezbollah in Lebanon using those explosive pagers last September. And this kind of calls attention, as does the pager story. And to your point, Matt, just like of how important it is to keep tight tabs on these supply chains, because this device that we're talking about is available on Amazon currently for like $330, just the headset controller. I guess it can be adapted to control different drones, but I wouldn't have thought that. So, I mean, this is not some sort of like, custom made small run piece of tech. This is like consumer grade.
Yeah. That would be an interesting trade-off. If you were going to use your drone to go blow somebody up, you also have to blow up at the moment of explosion, wherever your drone is. I like that. I'm into it.
Yeah, peace on earth, man.
Yeah,
we'll get there real quick with that policy. Sorry. Well, thanks a million to the exploding coyote. No, the combustible coyote. Exploding coyote is cool too. That sounds like another goth band or something. And then I just wanted to read a quick attaboy, I guess. Sort of. I don't know. We don't often read these kinds of messages, but I thought it was relevant. Just someone talking about the way we've been discussing Elon Musk and like his low-key overthrow of the government, whatever you want to call it, his the Doge department or division and his gaggle of young hackers, some of whom had some problematic backgrounds. Something's got to be discussed. We're experiencing it right alongside everybody else. But Sear just wrote in and said, good segment, guys. Don't be too spooked. We're all seeing this play out in real time. Be real. Say what's happening. We listen to be informed. Sear.
That is very sweet.
Appreciate that.
Wow.
We're doing the best we can, and it definitely is something to be freaked out about, whatever side of the political aisle you may fall, I think.
Yeah.
We've all read 1984. I mean, it's hard to not see some comparisons and talk about them.
Yeah, we're doing quite a few, what should we call, look-backs. We're doing some look-backs in history just to see some other things that have happened in the past.
Some alignments,
Yeah. Might show us.
History doesn't always repeat, but it rhymes, like Ben likes to say. Yeah,
there you go.
We're seeing some pretty fire bars from history right now.
Yeah. Did anybody, Noel, happen to catch the thing where Elon's 4-year-old was getting interviewed with him?
It's weird. Yeah, he said something like, he's talking about SpaceX, like we just do whatever we want or something like that. He's like, what was it that he says?
Specifically, he said something to the akin of quietly, like we'll quietly do
whatever we want.
Something about avoiding taxes, or like before the taxes come in, then we'll quietly do whatever we want. And then he had a maniacal billionaire laugh.
He sure did. And in that other very interesting appearance of young X in the Oval Office, where Trump's just kind of sitting there the whole time while, Elon fields questions from the press. At some point, I saw a meme where it kind of did a close-up on X, and he's looking at Trump and saying, like, don't talk, shut your f***ing mouth. Or something like that. I don't think it was AI, dude. And we know kids say the darndest things, and it was definitely some darndest things coming out of that kid's mouth.
It's really interesting. And again, that's like, it's a show. It's a big weird show of chaos to make us feel chaotic.
But it's also, look at me. I'm like I got my kid with me in the workplace. Like I'm a human. I'm just like you.
Yeah, it's just Dad's Day, so he's here, and he's going to tell the sitting president while he sits at his desk. Oh, here it is. I found another one. Quote, you're not the president. You need to go away. And then he went over and picked his nose for a while. It's crazy.
It's too much, you guys. I mean, listen, we can't not talk about it. So thanks, Sear, and thanks to Combustible Coyote, and thanks to Sacra Tomato for those wonderful missives from you. Yes, you, the public. Matt, what do you say we take a little quick break and then we come back with some audio listener mail?
Yes, sir. And we've returned. Let's jump to the phone lines to hear some personal experience about incarcerated firefighters. So we've been talking about this a lot. It's a complicated issue, and depending on where you are and what you've seen, you may think about it one way. Let's hear from somebody who has someone in their family who has gone through that experience, and as a third party to somebody going through it, like, what does she think? Let's jump to Mello.
Hey guys, I was listening to your recent podcast about firefighters in California, the incarcerated ones. My biological dad is an inmate in Idaho, and he's been in and out of this particular penitentiary for a couple of years, and he has been on their firefighting squad for the last 10 years or so, on and off. It's probably a little bit more than that, maybe about 15 years. And as an chronically incarcerated person, he loves it. It's something to get him out of their area. You can only do it if you're, in good standing in your prison. That way that they give you, leeway to leave. So for some of them, it gives them kind of a incentive to stay right while they're in prison so that they can potentially leave whenever they have the opportunity to. Saying opportunity seems callous because it's destructive and people's lives are at stake. I will caveat and say it is disgusting. It is quite literally slave labor. What they're doing for the wages that they're doing is horrendous. It's not like the prices in prison are any cheaper. They are still making $5 to $10 a day. And that $5 to $10 spends pretty similarly as it does out here. So it's not like they're earning a lot, and the work that they are doing is incredibly dangerous. But with that, I do think a lot of them do enjoy the opportunity, like you were saying, that moral obligation of, I have the time, I have the means, I have the body, I have, the strength to do it. So why not me instead of somebody else? And I think that is incredibly brave and selfless of them to do, to be able to put themselves out there and do that. But there's no reason why they shouldn't be compensated, or at the minimum be able to work as a firefighter after they're potentially out, and use those skills to a good use. It's disgusting and callous that they get out of prison and do all of this hardworking stuff and learn all these skills, and they still can't be a firefighter in the state that they're in. So I definitely think means like that need to be changed. And the pay needs to change, or the payment needs to change, whether it be a reduced sentence or something that's better for the person who's working. Anyways, I'm probably almost out of time. Thank you guys. Have a great day. Mellow, I guess, if you need to. Be good. Talk to you later.
Lots to unpack there.
Oh, yeah, definitely a lot. And thank you so much, Mello, for giving us all of that to unpack, because there's some great info in here. There are so many things I want to talk about, as you said, but let's get into it. First of all, somebody who has been doing this for a long time, right? This is Mello's father. Someone who is, as she stated, chronically incarcerated, constantly going in and out of a prison system. But when they're in, they are working as a firefighter. But once they get out of prison, in those moments, right? Even if you are constantly going back in for things, whoever, imagine yourself as this person, you can't then work as a firefighter on the outside. That seems tremendously short-sighted. Maybe I can see the reasoning behind it and all that stuff. But again, I don't know if somebody is trained and really good at doing something, why not put those skills to use?
Oh, I completely agree. And I mean, I was kind of just intrigued by the way the call sort of took a turn, where it started with referencing her father and how this is something that he really digs. Like, he really enjoys doing this. It's a way of getting outdoors. I mean, even she, as she was going through it, sort of kind of started checking herself almost, because it's like she caught herself describing it as sort of this great thing. But then when you look at the behind the scenes of it and how much they're actually paid and the absolute peril that they are in, maybe comparatively to being stuck in a prison cell, it feels like a great opportunity, I think was the word that she used, and sort of, walked it back a little bit. I can see that perspective, but it is an absolute example of these folks being taken advantage of as well.
Oh yeah. Well, and I think, again, this is a third person view of the thing, right? But it gets us a little closer to that experience of what is it actually like, and what does it mean to the person who is doing it. And in this case, it appears as though it stinks because the person is putting themselves in grave danger and they're not getting compensated for it, even though they've done other things wrong in the past, right? And that's the reason that they don't get compensated the way they should. That's the reasoning, at least from the state's perspective, as to why things are as they are. You did something wrong. Now you don't get the good stuff anymore. And we are also going to use you, for these.
Yeah.
For this really important, dangerous thing.
But it also represents sort of a lack or a shortcoming in just the institutions that are supposed to have that covered in the first place, right? That it's necessary. This isn't like we're sending inmates, to fight a fire entirely on their own. This is to like bolster numbers, in various state and city firefighting organizations, right?
Well, yeah, because if depending on the state, the county, and all that stuff, like, is it a volunteer firefighting force? Is it a paid firefighting force? Do the men and women who are out there doing it earn a salary, or are they just there because they want to do something good, as we've heard from previous, people who've written in?
For sure.
In this case, it shows the complexity, I think.
Did she go into whether or not this is a voluntary thing where it's like you sort of put yourself up for it and then you get selected? Or, I guess that's a really important question for me. Or is this, surely it couldn't just be forced, assigned, right? So there is a volunteer aspect to it.
Yes. And when I'm speaking on volunteering, I'm speaking like on the outside.
Oh, I get it.
Away from the prison system.
I'm just talking about the like morality of the whole thing. And like, is this forced labor, putting someone in harm's way? Or is there a choice, of being, willing to participate in something like this, knowing the stakes and knowing that you're not getting paid much? Again, I'm not trying to be like, a booster for the government or like prison systems. The whole system is totally effed, but I'm just trying to understand.
You're speaking to the psychological gymnastics that are at play in this entire situation, right?
Thank you, Matt.
Because you can say, as the prison system itself, right? You could say, hey, this is an opportunity for you to get outside and do something good. And really, with your other hand, you're just, you're offering them, offering them a pittance, taking the rest that they're getting in whatever grant they're getting from the state.
That's exactly right.
It's just very odd.
But it doesn't make the quote unquote opportunity for the individual any more or less valid. Like if I am someone maybe in the outside, I was a firefighter, I was a volunteer firefighter, and this is something that I truly, maybe even at the point I'm at in my rehabilitation, like I feel passionately about this, and I do want to help people, and I'm able to do that, with this much more than I am sitting here lifting weights and reading books in my cell.
So what is the reasoning, the concrete reasoning behind not allowing someone who is a part of one of these programs to get out and then continue doing that good?
Well,
right?
I think the caller's point about just the reform of the payment system is important, just to make it maybe a little more, they should be compensated more, because I didn't really ever think about that, but it's true. Like money more or less spends the same in prison, commissary, and also probably black market stuff as it does on the outside. If anything, the black market stuff is probably way more expensive.
For sure. And this is a tough thing for me, and I don't want to ruffle too many feathers here, but in my mind, if you are incarcerated and you're doing work, maybe I'm wrong. I don't think you should be compensated in the same way, but not like to those levels, those low levels, right? There's something in between there that makes sense. The biggest thing that makes sense to me is if you use the skills that you're learning in whatever job you're performing on the outside. But in this case, this specific case, at least according to Mello, and I've been looking up these specific rules in Idaho and trying to find out like what's the concrete thing. If you are incarcerated and you're a felon and you're in this, firefighters system, and you get out, can you actually be employed anywhere? Or is that just something that just can't happen? Or is it a specific thing for her father, right? I haven't been able to find it yet.
I'm sorry, I don't think I follow. Employed, like after you being released? Like, is this in some way like a benefit to your ability to be employed after, your sentence is done?
Well, that's one of the big points that Mello makes there, is that her father, once he leaves, is unable to be employed as a firefighter in the state where he was imprisoned and working as a firefighter while in prison. So he cannot be a fighter on the outside, according to whatever rules are set up, right, with hiring somebody. That is a huge misstep, I think.
I see what you're saying. That should be reconsidered because you've proven yourself in the field, and this is a field that is in most of the time desperate need of additional folks. So why would you cut off that ready-made supply of people for some sort of bias based on hiring former convicts? Yeah,
and then while incarcerated, rather than getting compensated for that kind of work, you are building
on-the-job training.
You're building yourself up, right? Your self-esteem, whatever it is you need to see that you are better than some of the stuff that got you in there. And now you can do good. I don't know. That's a little too.
I'm with you. And this is the kind of stuff that someone out there is going to be like, oh, you guys are so pie in the sky about this, yada, yada, yada. But I do think these kinds of things are worth discussing because it's like, the prison system sucks. We know about wrongful convictions and all of that. But are there ways, at the very least, to reintegrate people after they've served their sentences so they're not just like persona non grata in society and actually benefit society, And this, what you're suggesting, I think, is a pretty decent solution to that. And I'm certain that we're not the first people to have thought of this. But it does seem like it's a societal thing. Like, why do we still harbor this like long-term grudge against, former convicts and felons?
Exactly. So in that light, right, let's jump to a first person's perspective and hear from Jason in Salt Lake, who knows exactly what it's like.
Hey, this is Jason from Salt Lake City. Huge fan. Been listening to you guys for a while. You guys were talking about the wildfires the other day and the inmate firefighters. I just wanted to give a little personal experience. I made some poor decisions. I was incarcerated in Washington State for 5 years, and for 4 of those years, I got to be on the DNR crew fighting those forest fires. And I know people say it's slave labor or, indentured servitude, but you got to realize that, number one, a normal job in prison, I was working in the kitchen. I was making 32 cents an hour. They put me on a fire crew and I was making $1.60 an hour. Not only that, they feed you just like they feed the rest of the firefighters out there. You eat top tier food. Everybody is super cool to you. And for me and everybody else that was out there, it was something we wanted to do. You have to sign up for it. You have to get approved. It was something we all volunteered for and we wanted to be at, and on top of that, a lot of us made mistakes. We're in there and that kind of starts wearing on your self-esteem. You did some bad things and you start thinking that respect is who you are. And getting out there and doing something like that, not only was it amazing to be out in nature, outside the prison walls, but the self-esteem and the sense of accomplishment and pride it gave me and everybody else around me was priceless. We sort of at the end of the day proud of what we did. It was an honor to be out there with the firefighters, and they treat you like one of them. It's not like a bunch of inmates out there getting looked down on. They appreciate the help and they treat us accordingly. So I just wanted to give you guys a little piece of personal experience. I'm all for it. Obviously, I have a different outlook on things. I understand where other people are coming from, but again, that's just my experience. You can go ahead and use my name, my recording, whatever you want, man. I appreciate you guys. Keep up for it.
Wow. I'm on that verge of tearing up a little bit. I mean, I don't want to be too hard on sleeve about it, but the passion that I heard in his voice and just, I think the point we brought up about a way of paying it forward or in some way, redemption is such a movie term, but you know what I mean? I don't know. I heard that in his voice and in his story. Yeah,
for sure. For sure. And that's huge too. Being able to hear it in the voice when somebody is
that was me
telling
hearing
you
that for the
something
first
like that.
time, by the way. Yeah. I mean, I'm literally, you could see, I'm kind of emotional. I'm not lying.
I see it and I feel it too, man. And it's incredible to hear that because often on the news, if you're watching just videos on YouTube or somebody commenting, or even on this show sometimes, and I cop to it, we talk in generalities. We talk in, a situation that affects a whole bunch of people. But when you hear from an individual consciousness, a human that has gone through it, is going through it, whatever it is, it fully changes things because it's not about statistics. It's not about, laws and all that other stuff. It's how did all of that stuff affect my experience, right? And in this case, Jason just lets us know there are really good things to a system like that. It's just the system itself and the way it functions maybe is the thing that needs to get altered quite a bit. But there's something inside of it that is extremely positive, at least in my view, after hearing that from Jason specifically.
Oh, 100%. I mean, and that's the kind of thing that, like, on paper, it's easy to get hung up on the negative side of it. And I think that all of that stuff still holds. And Jason didn't mention that. But again, it wasn't about that. It was about his perspective on it. So it does highlight what a complex issue is. And I didn't realize how comparatively even less they get paid for, working in the kitchen or a machine shop or whatever else, on the prison grounds. That's insane in and of itself. So this is a much larger, discussion about reform in terms of like what prisoners are compensated. But to your point, Matt, it does feel separate from what happens outside, but there should be a little bit more parity between the two.
Yeah. Yep. Just that concept of a group of firefighters welcoming in another group of incarcerated men. They don't see them as that. They see them as human beings that are going to help them solve a major problem, right? And that's all you see. And that's all it has to be. There are, of course, there's minutia to get into depending on what specific crimes and all that stuff that you have to take into consideration at some level. But, if you can drill down deep enough, I think you can find the humanity in everybody. So, God, I have some other stuff I wanted to say here.
Please.
I'm kind of losing it a bit, but it's just, I was thinking about social media and some of our talks about attention span, talks about the click is the most important thing. How do you get that click? How do you get the eyeball on it so they don't scroll away? A user, right? A story about incarcerated firefighters being wronged by a system, I think, is going to get a lot more clicks than a personal story from Jason, let's say, or a group of firefighters who say, hey, this was really incredibly meaningful for us to be able to do this.
Well, and this person's not coming at us from a place of being like a shill or a poster boy for some kind of program. Like, this is a human experience being shared directly from the human who experienced it. And I don't know, that's how it hit me, So I guess what I was getting at with stuff on paper versus like when you actually talk to people, I think that's just always so important to remember about anything, is it's so easy to spin up one version or perspective about a thing that is certainly can be valid, but it completely ignores just the like broadness of people's experiences oftentimes. And it's so, because of the black and white of the internet and social media, it's so easy to need to wrap it in some kind of cut and dry sort of like shell so that people can eat it up and be mad about it or be gushy, bleeding heart about it instead. I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Mostly mad though. Mostly mad.
No, it is mad, dude. It's mad.
Right?
It's almost exclusively mad.
That's how the algorithm works.
For the short form stuff, especially, Yeah.
Yeah. If it's going to elicit a comment from you, which generally means you're fired up enough, if you like something a lot, you're like, wow, this is incredible. You might give it a little heart and then send it to a buddy or something like that. But if you're fired up, you're going to comment, and then somebody else might get fired up, and then they're going to comment, and then you might comment back. And guess what? You spent a ton of time on their platform or app or whatever. Just creepy stuff. Well, hey, we're going to tell you how to contact us at the end of the show. Please let us know if you have any thoughts on this stuff, if you have any experience you want to share, and send it our way. We'd love to hear it. And we'd also love to share it with the class if we can. For now, let's take a break, hear a word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back with more messages from you. And we're back. And we're jumping to the phone lines again, this time to hear from Troglodyte about a story we covered that hit a little too close to home, but in a good way. I think in a good way. A while back, we interviewed Carl Miller, the host of Kill List, and that is a story that we'll talk more about after the break, but it's a story about the dark net and hired assassins and scams and actual real life people that want to kill other people. It's a deep, dark story. You can listen to that episode right now if you want to. Here is Troglodyte's experience.
All right.
Hey, this is Troglodyte again. I'm listening to your new episode about the dangers of the dark web, and you're talking about Amy and Stephen Allwine. They, I'm not even kidding you, were my neighbors. My little sister babysat for their child. I went to their house for the National Night Out, and that murder happened my first year of college when I moved away to go to college for the first time. And it was the wildest thing I ever experienced. I grew up down the street from their house, and their property was then sold, and now like a huge subdivision of houses are being put on there. If you want to talk about the Stephen and Amy Allwine case, I lived it. And I love your show so much. Thank you so much. When you were doing the dark web stuff, I was like, oh my God, I know a dark web assassin story because that was my neighbor. And then you said Amy Allwine, and my jaw hit the floor, and I stopped, and I pulled the car over, and I called, and I was like, oh my God. So now I get to listen to the whole thing about what you guys found. But yeah, crazy stuff. Thank you. Love the show. You can use whatever I say. Bye.
There we go.
Wow.
Troglodyte.
Okay.
Okay.
Stephen Allwine. Really?
Yes.
He kind of looks like a dude who would hire an internet assassin to kill somebody. I'm
man.
sorry. He's got the dead eyes a little bit, man. I'm just looking at this picture of him. I've never seen this guy before, and he has a little bit of a, what is it, like a 1,000-mile stare.
Yeah. This is the story, if you happen to actually listen to Kill List, this is the story that opens the entire show. It's a story of a man that called 911 because his wife had been shot and she was dead. And after, the police began investigating, they found out that, it does appear that he killed his wife, that Stephen killed his wife. It appears that way. And he is currently serving time because of that. It's a complicated story, but it all goes back to how he attempted to hire a hitman on the darknet.
He did. Yeah, okay. So it looks like he attempted it and was unsuccessful, and then he felt strongly enough about it that he went through with it himself, right?
Yes, which is really the entire point of the Kill List show, or Kill List, if you look it up. It's that there was this fake assassins website where people were paying tens of thousands of dollars to have other people assassinated. But the site itself was a scam, and it was money just being taken in by somebody else, right? But what Carl Miller and the rest of the team that he was working with realized is that every single human being who has paid money into this site is potentially a killer, right? Because they wanted that desire to have someone else dead could lead them to do what Stephen Allwine did and kill that person in real life rather than have somebody else do it. So check that out. Pretty great episode and great podcast, if you ask me.
Yeah, I've heard of it and I've heard good things, but I have not checked it out myself. I kind of tend to shy away from the hardcore true crime stuff these days. I just listen to like pop culture. There's just enough of that going on in the real world, but it sounds like it's well made, and we've all, of course, participated in making these types of shows. So this sounds like a high quality one for sure. Oh yeah.
It's very unique, very cool perspective, and you're on the ground with them as they are attempting to basically save people from potential murder. It's intense stuff. On a lighter note.
Yes, we always like to end on a lighter note. Let's go out on a high note.
Yeah, let's let this person take us there.
Okay.
Take us all the way there.
Hey guys, this is Officer Hot Pants. In talking about foods that have a weird connection with dreams. When I was a Mormon missionary, one of the rules is, of course, you can't have any kind of sexual relations with someone of the opposite gender, including up to hugging as well, just to kind of help, keep that temptation away while you're a missionary. Now, there was a myth that I heard as a missionary. I never tried it myself. That if you were to eat 3 bananas right before going to bed, you would induce yourself into having a wet dream. Now, I'd heard this secondhand. Tried people claim it, even in the area where I served among other missionaries. I never saw it personally. I always thought it was kind of funny, but again, I never tried it personally, so I can't say if it was just something that was induced by thought power. Whatever that's called, when, sugar pill kind of thing. But anyways, thank you so much, guys, for everything you guys do. Show's great. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
All right.
Okay, how many bananas was that again?
3 bananas, according to Officer Hot Pants. Just so everyone knows, I've got 4 bananas in my house right now. 1 is for my son's breakfast in the morning, and the other 3 for later tonight. All right. What a fun idea. You can find all kinds of stuff online about consuming bananas and milk before bed and all kinds of other things to get potassium and certain nutrients in your body before you sleep, for, all the beneficial effects of that stuff. It's tough to know what's actually backed by science, and then I can't find anything that is actually connecting potassium intake and banana intake to nocturnal emissions of one form or another. But hey, let us know what you find. Get out there and experiment with them bananas, just like I'm going to do.
Matt, I'm going to quote you way out of context on that one, buddy. Yeah, get out there and experiment with those bananas, y'all. Let us know what wild stuff you get up to with bananas out there in the real world. We're pretty easy to find.
Oh, you can find us all over the place. We're on the internet. We're on YouTube, Conspiracy Stuff. We're on Instagram, Conspiracy Stuff Show. I think you can still find us on TikTok if that still exists when you're hearing this. There's other stuff, Twitter, X, Facebook, Conspiracy Stuff. Just look around. You'll find us.
And hey, if you want to get in touch with us, just like many of our listeners today did, Matt, I'm going to have to get you to give us those names of our amazing voicemailers. You can call us at 1-833-STDWYTK. Matt, tell them how it goes.
Yes, when you call in, give yourself a cool nickname and let us know within the voicemail if we can use your name and message on the air. You've got 3 minutes. Say whatever you'd like. Call in just like Crooked Scorpion, Mello, Jason, Troglodyte, and Officer Hot Pants. And we've got other ways to contact us. You can send us an email. We are
conspiracy@iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.